Freedom stands amongst one of man's greatest needs, and when this is achieved, the future depends on the actions or inactions of such a man. As Nigeria attains 57 years as a nation, no doubt, like all nations, we have had our fair share of tribulations, political, economic, and social. However, with some experiences not very pleasant, the nation remains one as at today. As we reflect over our strides as a nation, what is the way forward? This is the thrust of our program this morning. Thanks for joining us. I am Alpha Jackden, and the program is Frank Talk. My guest is a development advocate, Jide Ojo. Sir, as always, thank you so much for having you on the program. I know how busy you've been since yesterday.
Yeah, no problem.
All we can say is thank you. This is your own part of contributions to nation building.
That's true.
Well, Nigeria turned 57 yesterday. Let's begin with the common question everyone is asking. Is Nigeria truly 57? If we are to look at the life of a 57-year-old man and to look at the life of a nation that turned 57.
Thank you. It's very difficult for you to compare human beings with an inanimate entity like a country. But again, it's a work in progress for every country. USA has 240 years of, I think 41 years of electoral democracy behind it. But you could still see that they are grappling with some internal issues in their politics and their economy. So there is no country that is perfect that can't be improved. The greatest room in the world is that of improvement. We have our issues, just like you pointed out in the opening remarks. We've had our fair share of tribulations. We've gone through a civil war. We've come out of it. We've gone out of about 30 years of military rule. We've come out of it, 18 years uninterrupted, to God be the glory. Proud to that, we have had hundreds of years of colonialism, hundreds of years of slavery. These are things that shape a country. You can't wish it away. That look, after all, I mean, we've been independent. The cause must be before the effect. People were existing before independence.
Right.
People were existing before the slavery.
Yes.
People were existing before the colonialism. But all of those experiences shape our nationhood today. And people need to factor that into the equation. I'm not making an excuse for our underdevelopment, far from it, but I'm saying that you cannot wish away those decades and centuries of, anti-human rights development.
That's right.
Today, we still have military hangover, even though we've had 18 years of uninterrupted democratic, or as some people want to call it, civil rule. The military mentality is still there. We have not strayed far away from military, because from 1999 to 2007, our former president was a former military head of state. Now we are allowed 8 years of civil rule, as in civilians being the president. Now we are back to a former head of state ruling us again. So the military has not really divested itself of governance. And they have become a very critical sector in governance. And their mentality is not same as that of a Democrat. You hear our current president saying he is a converted Democrat.
That's right.
But that still hasn't weaned him completely from his background, where he spent the bulk of his active years.
Right.
So, be that as it may, a nation, our country at 57, is a mixed grill of plus and minuses, good and bad. Life is a unity of opposites.
That's it.
Male, female, good, bad, black, white. So you have a mixed grill. It's a potpourri of mixed feelings, mixed reactions, mixed development. There's events that have shaped us, that have given us applause across the world. We've had the Nigerian winning Miss World. We've had Nigerians entertaining, doing us great, proud across the globe. On African continent, we are holding it down. We are still the best entertainers, music-wise, film-wise, the entire industry. Nigerians are doing us proud. In athletics, we are not faring badly. We've won some good laurels, World Cup at junior levels, and we're on the verge of qualifying for another round of Senior World Cup. Of course, it depends on how you want to look at the cup. Is it half filled or half empty? There are issues, no doubt.
Sure.
But I think we cannot totally sweepingly condemn that we have not achieved anything.
No, definitely we have achieved a lot. I would want to find out from you. I believe you listened to Mr. President's broadcast yesterday.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
The statistics. The statistics. You see, information is power.
Yes.
And unless you tell people, they may never know.
No.
Let me start with this. Did you know that the federal government has released a total sum of 1.64 trillion to the states to offset payment of salaries, allowances, and pensioners? 1.6 trillion in 2 years. The figures were given 200 billion in 2015, 400 and something billion in 2016, 1 trillion in this 2017. Already 1 trillion. Yet we still have states that have not paid salaries, allowances, and gratuities of pensioners. 2, agriculture. Our successes in the agricultural sector came out very glaringly with the Aqua Borrowers scheme. By central banking in collaboration with some deposit money banks. We have seen significant increase in land cultivation. 330,000 hectares of land cultivated of 8 different food items: maize, cassava, wheat, cashew, and a couple of others. We have also seen a saving of $150 million foreign exchange that has been saved.
That's right.
And 60 billion naira in subsidy that have been saved. A bag of fertilizer, 50 kg, that used to cost 13,000 naira, now cost 5,500 naira. Still with statistics, the inflation is on the downward trend for the past 7 months. The naira against the dollar, in February it was 550 to a dollar. Today, as at the time Mr. President gave his speech, it's 360 to a dollar. So naira has gained some strength, almost 200 naira strength compared difference. Then you come to issue of power generation. In September, just last month, we were able to hit 7,001 megawatts of electricity supply. From 3,000, 4,000, as at the time of this administration came into power in 2015. That is a significant achievement. Then you also saw the president also touched on the social welfare scheme, 500 billion social welfare scheme. They are going to be employing, at least each state is expected to employ minimum of 10,000 graduates, to join the workforce. So those statistics for me stood out. And I think if we are not playing with figures, if truly and genuinely those are the true position of things, I believe we are on. It was released to the media a day before, on the 30th of September, 57 achievements of this administration. 57 in 57 years. So we are not where we ought to be, but we are not where we used to be. So in some sense, we are making appreciable progress. Look at when Mr. President started with security. Over 206 Chibok school girls or thereabout have been released
and returned
to their family. About 16,000 Boko Haram insurgents have been arrested. Some of them are undergoing prosecution now. So many things that the administration was able to realize. And don't forget, we are technically out of recession. Even though that's not part of the president's speech, I'm only talking in broader terms of what is already in the.
But you know, as you did mention, I just hope that most of these statistics that were reeled out yesterday can be set to really translate to, you know, beginning to touch the lives of the common man on the street. I'll give you a typical example. I was out last night till about 11:30.
Yeah.
And I can assure you most of Abuja is dark. Our street lights are not working.
Yeah.
You know, and if we have truly hit 7,000 megawatts, I wonder why that is the case.
Now, let me tell you, it's one side of the story. We hit 7,000 megawatts. First and foremost, many of these street lights are powered by solar panels. Solar power. At least the one in my own community is powered by solar. I don't know for the one in city centers. You know, I'm a villager, so I live in the village, so I wouldn't know what.
Well, I can tell you the city center is not.
Now,
it's not solar powered.
It's not the 7,000 megawatts does not tell you the entire story.
Okay.
It tells you about generation. But under the former President Obasanjo, we have privatized and commercialized the power sector. You know, remember the power sector reform. So we have different set of companies have been licensed to generate electricity under the NIPP, National Integrated Power Project. We have a government-owned transmission company of Nigeria. Then we have licensed power distribution companies. We also have national gas companies supplying the thermal stations gas. We have the electricity bulk purchasing company, which actually warehouse the power that are transmitted from the generating companies down to the last. So now the electricity bulk purchasing company sells power to the distribution companies. Now, statistics have shown recently that we have weak transmission lines. So not the entire 7,000 megawatts are evacuated from the point of production
to distribution
to the bulk purchasing company. So we have issues with that. Weak transmission lines. You see all those huge power transmission lines and cables and substations and high tension wires. They are weak. Okay. They cannot evacuate the entire electricity that's generated. That's number one challenge. Number two
is... Why not fix those first? Why go and generate what you cannot distribute?
You know, things are supposed to be done simultaneously. It's supposed to be as you'd like. But you know, there were issues with Manitoba contract. Right. Manitoba was the Canadian company that was brought in to run our transmission company of Nigeria. And there were serious issues to the extent that sometimes last year or 2 years ago, workers in the head office of TCN even had to go on strike. There were a lot of issues with the structure of the contract and all of that. Long story short, it's not the contract of Manitoba has not been renewed. So I don't know what the mindset of the presidency is about TCN. Now, I'm coming to the issue of electricity bulk purchasing company. They buy this transmitted power and sell to distribution companies. So it's not like to the best of my knowledge, it's not like when you transmit, you just distribute.
That's right.
There are the electricity bulk purchasing company buys from TCN, then the distribution companies buy from the electricity bulk purchasing company.
That's right.
Now they are not buying all the power that is available.
Because the transmission lines are weak.
Not necessarily. I think it's appropriate pricing.
Well,
They feel possibly that the price at which the electricity bulk purchasing company is selling the electricity is not cost recoverable for them, that they are not going to be able to make their own profit. It's like when we buy fuel and you said there should not be increase in the price of transportation.
That's right.
I don't know whether you understand. So the same thing, you buy the electricity from the electricity and the bulk electricity company, and you are selling at a regimented price to the consumers. Of course, if you listen to news in the recent past, there's the argument about the increase in tariff. There was something was put in place some years under Obasanjo, multi-year tariff, MITO, multi-year tariff order. The government was subsidizing electricity for a period, and they were divesting their subsidy in order to allow the electricity distribution companies to be able. They were paying subsidy to the discos, that's the distribution companies. So they were facing the subsidy, but I think government is still owing huge sums of money, just like the issue of subsidy with the petroleum sector. So that's one issue. The other issue is energy theft. Because a lot of houses were not metered.
That's right.
People do all manner of illegal connection, consume electricity without paying. 3, metering. It was the responsibility of the electricity distribution company to provide free meters.
That's right.
To the consumers in order to enable them pay for the services they are enjoying. Unfortunately, they have not been able to meter up to 40% of the entire population.
That's right.
So you have the larger bulk of the citizenry unmetered, many houses unmetered. So what they do is estimated billing, which in many quarters is called crazy billing. Right. Because you just look at your company like this. This is a television organization. They must be using a lot of gadgets. So your charges, electricity charges in a month is 150,000. It should be pay as you go.
Pay what you consume.
What you consume. If you have a meter that is working optimally, genuine, meter. That's right. Whether you may end up not using up to 50,000.
That's right.
In a month.
In a month, yeah.
Because some of these lightings are just energy saving bulbs.
That's right.
You don't do laundry here. You are not using iron. You are not using electricity. The boiling ring. That's Those are things that consume a lot of energy. So, but they do all these crazy billings under the guise that since your house doesn't have a meter, it has analog meter. Even the analog meter is supposed to be read.
That's right.
But they hardly do that any longer.
They
just estimate. Oh, this house is a 2-bedroom flat, or this is a duplex. Then you should be using the X amount. For instance, in my home, I use energy saving bulbs. I don't use light to sleep. I don't use iron. I do my laundry outside. I don't use. So basically, you cannot use the number of rooms I have.
And the number of air conditioners you have.
I don't even have an AC. I don't even have one. So if you come and do an estimated billing without even inspecting my room to know what gadgets I have. So how do you now? That means you are not treating me right.
That's right.
So if you have provided the meter, it will have been easy to say I'm paying for the service I'm enjoying.
That's right.
But here you are making people to pay for what they don't consume. And that's why a lot of people refuse to pay. They refuse to pay because they feel ripped off. They feel that they are being made to pay for services that they are not enjoying. So there's a whole bouquet of issues. So we cannot just say, yes, electricity generation has improved. Eureka, we are there. No. We are not.
You know, you made mention of one of the things Mr. President made mention of, looking at the value of the naira per the dollar. We know that the CBN has been injecting a lot of funds to help stabilize the naira regime, against the dollar. Do you think that is sustainable?
It is not.
And to a large extent, can we really say it is Uhuru? Can we really?
It's not
sleep?
Uhuru, and it can't be Uhuru. What will make it Uhuru is when we do backward integration.
Very good.
We are on track. I must say we are on track. Why did I say we are on track? You see, we are paying how many $1 billion in food importation every year?
That's right.
Now we are reversing that. Today we have 11 fertilizer blending companies.
Yeah.
Like I told us earlier on, the price of fertilizers used to be 13,000 for a 50 kilogram of bag of fertilizer. Today it's now dropped to 3,000.
That's right.
Or there 2,000. No, 5,005 rather. It is now 5,000 according to Mr. President. It's now 5,005. Look at that. That description. Now we are even saving $150 million from food importation and $60 billion from subsidy regime. Remember, we used to subsidize fertilizer. And that, if you recall, maybe early in the year or late last year, President signed an MOU with Morocco over fertilizer production and all of that. I think that has taken off. So we are now producing this fertilizer locally. We don't have to import them. That becomes cheaper. We are saving foreign currency. If we reduce, as we are reducing importation of wheat, we are reducing importation of poultry products, we are reducing importation of fisheries, Naira will start to gain strength because the demand will be lower than the supply.
That's right.
The moment the supply drops, the moment demand is lower than the price, the supply, price will stable. But if the demand outstrips supply, price will rise. That's just the basic truth. So what I'm saying is this. The moment we do all this backward integration, we start producing more, reducing pressure on Naira in terms of demand, even in terms of our medical tourism. If we are able to provide this hospital facilities, treatment of some kinds of ailments that make people to travel to India, to Germany, and we are able to provide those facilities here, we will save the Naira. If you are able to provide university education that is making people to go to UK, look at the humongous sums of money we are spending on foreign education.
Serious capital flight.
Even to Ghana here, to Benin Republic. A lot of Nigerians are there.
That's right.
Schooling. Whereas we have many of our private universities almost empty.
That's right.
And you don't have to pay in dollars for local private schools, no matter how expensive it is. But if you want to go to Ghana, they will not collect CD from you. If you are a foreign student, you have to pay in that currency. If you go to UK, where the bulk of our students are, they are paying. And now, because many parents can no longer source the foreign exchange, they are withdrawing their children to come and school in Nigeria. There are very good private universities in Nigeria. And even our public universities are not doing badly. It's just that we need to tighten the nuts and bolts and strengthen. That's why ASU has continually gone on strike. Since 2009, you signed an agreement, you fail to implement. If you implement, and it's always easy for government to blackmail the unions. They said they are ungrateful, they are not. Whereas the bulk of the demands is improve quality education.
That's right.
In our tertiary institutions. But they will put the issue of demand for better wages as number one. So government will tell you it's all about more money. They want more money. Why shouldn't I get more money? Why should a counselor earn more than a professor?
That's right.
Why should I not get more money given my wealth of experience? So many professors cannot even buy a tier leather vehicle. They are all reveling in buying fourth grade cars. Some professors don't even have cars. Their cars are unserviceable and they can't replace it. Many of them don't have private homes because they can't afford. So if those who teach you and I cannot have the quality of life that they desire and they deserve, then something is wrong. So what I'm saying is this: saving the naira, injecting naira and dollars into the foreign exchange market is not the sustainable way to go. It's when you reduce pressure on the demand for that foreign currency that we will get there. Because the moment the demand for it, all the things that is making us to demand, like education, health, food, and raw materials importation, if we do backward integration, all these beverage companies, beer and all of that, if they can start sourcing their materials locally. Is it wheat or barley? Or there is we have climate that can produce all manner of raw materials locally. Look, fix Ajakuta steel industry. You will save a lot of foreign exchange. Use in importing iron ore, steel and iron ore from Europe.
That's right.
So why can't, the moment we are able to fix all these things, there will be reduction in the pressure on naira. CBN wouldn't need to continue to inject the dollars, scarce resources into strengthening the naira. So that, in my own view, is the ultimate way to go.
All right. You know, at 57, I will want us to take time and look at the three arms of government.
Yeah.
When it comes to issues that border on checks and balances, do you think we are on the right track?
The checks and balances are there on paper, but it has remained a paper tiger. We do know that there is no absolute separation of powers. But when you say checks and balances, each institution or each arm of government is supposed to serve as a watchdog on the other. So the judiciary is not altogether independent because appointment is by the executive arm, confirmed by the legislative arm.
Yes.
You know, at some level, like the CJN,
right.
Appeal Court justices and Supreme Court justices
Right.
are subject to legislative approval. Now, the National Assembly also oversights the presidency.
That's right.
They have the power of appropriation, making laws and all of that. Then the presidency is responsible for implementation of the laws. But what you have found is that there is no coordination. They are working in silos majorly. There is supposed to be a robust engagement among the three arms of government. The presidency is not putting his personality behind some bills that he once passed. There is this frosty relationship between the presidency or the executive on one hand and the legislative arm on the other. And that is not helping us. Because no matter your good intentions, you need this National Assembly. You cannot pass your own law.
That's right.
When you prepare an executive bill, you send it to the National Assembly. I had expected, for instance, that this constitutional amendment exercise, that the presidency should have shown sufficient interest in some key areas of reforms that it once passed.
That's right.
And we missed the train. In some sense, October last year, the presidency woke up from slumber and decided to set up a Ken Namani Electoral Reform Committee. First, I wrote against it in my column in the Punch newspaper. It's needless. What we should have done is to press for the implementation of Justice Muhammadu Lawal Uwais Electoral Reform Committee of 2008.
Yes.
But let's even say that one is dated. You have 2014 National Conference report, which is more closer.
That's right.
Look at the over 600 resolutions. Pick and choose. Draft an executive bill, sponsor it and say, we want constitutional amendment in XYZ places. The presidency did not do that. Now, the party itself failed in its responsibility. After all, it's the party that sponsored the candidates, both the executive and the legislative arm. But you see that insulation. The party ought to engage robustly with the leadership of National Assembly with a copy of his manifesto. That this is what we promised Nigerians.
That's right.
In our manifesto, we said there will be devolution of power.
Powers.
We will do X, Y, Z. See, this is a golden opportunity. You need to take this on board. But rather, the party itself is not meeting as regularly as it should. They are having internal issues, which is yet to boil over into the open. But you could see altercations within and among some key chieftains of All Progressive Congress, which is not helping us because they need to build synergy amongst themselves and engage the institutions of government that are responsible for reforms. You understand? So you started this rough fight with the leadership of National Assembly because the party itself goofed right from the outset.
That's right.
By wanting to impose leadership on the National Assembly.
And it took almost 1 year before things could settle down.
It wasn't even settled. It wasn't until this middle of this year that you could see when eventually Farouk Lawan, who they wanted to be Senate president, became the majority leader after the fox passed from the former majority leader Ali Ndume, for calling so they used that as an opportunity to remove him. Senator Marafa used to be the critic of Bukola Saraki. They called him and settled him technically through whatever internal mechanism. Now he has stopped you now have a more stable Senate.
That's right.
But you know that at some point they were still very edgy about the Ike Ekweremadu as deputy Senate president. So they were looking for every means and ways to remove him so that they can put an APC person there. But I think they have better wisdom as now, because after all the searches on his residence and they couldn't find anything incriminating, I think they have let. But that is not the way to start.
That's right.
You can't impose leadership. It backfired under Obasanjo. Obasanjo was imposed speaker, imposed Senate president. Remember the yo-yo in the southeast from what's it called? Evans Ewerem or Evans or Evan. Then we move on to Okadigbo, to Inamani came last. Nwabara.
Yes.
Then Inamani. All within how many years?
Yes, that's right.
Then in the House of Reps, they came with Salisu Buhari. Then when that one was exposed, they brought in this Ete, Patricia Ete.
No, Galina first.
And I think
Patricia Ete.
Then Dimeji and the rest. So imposing leadership has not always been in the enlightened best interest of the party in power. And I thought APC should have learned from that. But they didn't. Both in this House of Reps and House of Senate, they wanted to impose the leadership.
That's right.
And that made the leadership of the party very unpopular, so much so that the relationship was so frosty that instead of the leadership engaging robustly the leadership that has emerged at the behest of members of the National Assembly, they distanced themselves.
That's right.
And that led us to where we are now. And you could see, I was on another platform on Arise TV yesterday, and I had with me former Speaker Gali Umar Naba.
Okay.
And he said, even though he's now a member of APC, from PDP, he said they hardly meet. The party leadership hardly meet to discuss. He said when he was House of Reps Speaker, there were a caucus of 30 made up of the presidency, the leadership of National Assembly, the key principal officers of National Assembly, key party leaders from the zone and from the HQ, and some select ministers, that they meet every Monday to discuss national issues, to trash out issues, to provide solutions to emerging issues and matters arising. He said, but under this administration, nothing of such happens. Even the convention of APC has continually been postponed. Now they said it's November. May God help them.
Amen.
So what we are saying is this. The three arms of government are working largely in silos. And that is not helpful.
For the
Yes, you need checks and balances, but you need to collaborate and synergize
for the
good of the nation.
That's right.
You could see that even the relationship between the presidency and the judiciary was adversarial for the last part of the first 2 years of this administration. Because I recall that the Mr. President said, look, judiciary is my headache, my greatest headache. They are not supporting me in the fight against corruption. But thankfully, he acknowledged the support of the CJN in saying recently that there should be a dedicated court, special court, to try expeditiously corruption cases. So that has helped mend some fences, and I think the synergy is coming.
You know, above what we heard yesterday, can you say to a large extent that this administration truly has been fighting corruption with the zeal it should have taken?
It's a yes and no. I would say, without being uncharitable to this administration, if it has fought corruption, if other previous administration has fought corruption the way it has fought it, maybe we will not be in this economic morass we find ourselves. I've never seen in previous administration people hardly return money. We saw a lot of people returning money under this administration. We have the whistleblowers policy under this administration, although I believe it should be backed with a legislation. Because a policy...
Well, they are trying to do that.
That's what should even precede.
But talking about the whistleblower policy, the EFCC came up with something. I remember Hajia Waziri was then the chair. And what was it? See something, say something. The funny thing is that a lot of Nigerians saw nothing.
Yeah, they won't see anything because there was no motivation. Now, under this whistleblower policy, a percentage of whatever the government is recovered through your information belongs to you legitimately. But so I think it's 5% or something.
Like that.
So if let's assume
why solve a problem? Why solve a problem with the same thing?
No. Wait. Let me tell you this. About 43 billion that was found in Ikoyi that led to the suspension of the NIADG. Let's assume eventually they found that was a process of corruption. The person who assisted government to expose that is a millionaire already. Because that legitimately 5% of that 43 billion will turn you don't have to work for the rest of your life.
Of your village.
So you have made something so you have motivated, you have incentivized people to say something when they see something. And you see that whistleblower policy is now being adopted into even the issue of small arms and light weapons, issue of security, issue of woman trafficking. Everybody is now keying into it to say, oh, if this can work. But what struck me is that in the past few months, we've not had any breakthrough again.
That should tell you, because of the legislation that came, don't forget something. People are scared.
Yeah.
People are worried.
But I know some people have been paid. Some people got paid.
This is the problem I have with the whistleblower policy. If I indeed know that you have so, and I know you got it illegitimately, all I need to do is access you. I'll go to you and say, sir, I know this is here. Please, it should not go beyond us. Settle me, let me go. I can tell you that is what is going on. Because why should I want to go and expose you?
But you know that is dangerous.
Well,
you know the danger in that. The danger in that is if you go walk to somebody and say, I know where you keep your stolen wealth.
Chances you may not live to eat it.
You cannot. You will not. You don't. I read a book. I think it's Frederick Fawcett's book that talked about. I've forgotten the title of that particular novel. And he did a thorough expose on how whistleblower policy worked in US. Okay. They can even, under that policy, you can be transformed. As in, they can do surgical operation to change your face, change everything about you, so that even when you live in the same community, they widely recognize that it was you. At the expense of the state, they can take you out of the country with your entire family to make sure that you are safe. The issue of safety and security of whistleblowers has not been factored into. Because even the current whistleblower policy is just scratching the surface. People are know that even if the information could be traced to them, and the person who is a victim knows that you are the one that exposed him, he will come after you. But if the state has taken responsibility to protect the whistleblower by making sure that himself and his immediate and extended family are taken care of by the state,
That's right.
they will be more courageous, more forthright. But here you leave them to their whims and caprices. What many are doing is that if they pay them that money, they disappear of their own accord. Maybe they go to a Caribbean island or somewhere where they will not be easily traced. But I think we still need to do a lot more on that whistleblower. The issue of treasury single account, the issue of BVN, all of these are supposed to work in synergy. But where there are black legs, there are fifth columnists that are not making this anti-corruption work to succeed. Look at what the president said. IPPS, integrated payroll system, is still being undermined. Not every civil servant have keyed into that. So we still have a lot of ghost workers that have not been exposed. We have exposed several thousands, a lot of savings have been made, but not until when every ministries, departments, and agencies have been put on that IPPS that we can say we are there for the federal government. But you know, part of the recommendations for the disbursement of Paris Club Fund is that states also must do something similar without ghost workers, embrace certain openness in governance and transparency. But they don't. They are doing it in the breach. So when you look at this BVN issue too,
that's right.
We heard in the news that some banks are conniving with some customers to withdraw money even though they don't have BVN numbers. And they are getting their own cut of this. So then this issue of fast tracking, in 2015, a piece of legislation was passed called Administrative of Criminal Justice Act, ACJA. Administrative of Criminal Justice Act. It was meant to fast track the judicial process of criminal proceedings. But it has been observed in breach. That piece of legislation, if it's strictly adhered to, you are supposed to deal from start to finish of any criminal case 6 months. You are supposed to have, but we still have corruption cases from the set of 2007. That about 13 governors that were arraigned by the EFCC, who after detention got their passport and under one guise or the other that they are going for medical tourism. Many of them are still walking the streets. Some of them have even contested election to sit in our Senate. So we need to tighten so many knots and bolts around our issue of anti-corruption. But that's not to say that efforts are not being made. And that effort needs to be applauded, needs to be appreciated. It's just that there is a lot more transparency and accountability that needs to come into play in that sector. Yeah. So, and as the president said in his broadcast yesterday, the National Assembly needs to key in. There are pieces of legislation that are going to help strengthen the anti-corruption war, which needs to be passed by the National Assembly, which they have not yet done.
All right. You know, as we prepare to round up, I will want to find out from you issues that border on security, because Mr. President's speech yesterday was predicated on security, the economy, and of course issues around the political space. Look at security. Well, thank God, October 1 came and left. Not a single bullet was fired. I think we're all happy as a country where everybody is going about his business, whatever part of the country you come from and what have you. But how can we, in your opinion, how best can we deal with this issue of agitations that has really, really and truly threatened the corporate existence of our country?
It's very easy. You see, Peter Tosh, the late Peter Tosh, I believe he's dead, said equal rights and justice. Equal rights and justice. Equal right and justice without tension and agitation.
That's right.
The moment you have an inclusive governance, you are not discriminatory. You are not marginalizing any of the key stakeholders in the process, you see the tension will drop automatically. What do you think has been responsible for placating the Niger Deltas? They created Ministry of Niger Delta, 13% derivation or derivation, amnesty program since 2010 or thereabout. Then they have Ministry of Niger Delta.
That's right.
They also allowed Obasanjo in a social engineering manner, picked a Niger Delta and Ijaw to become the vice president in 2007.
That's right.
That was a master stroke. That gives the Ijaws a sense of belonging, a bragging right to say we now have one of us in Abuja.
That's right.
Holding a very sensitive position. And the man moved from vice president to acting president to substantive president, ran a full 4-year term.
That's right.
It may as well be a bragging right. It may never have really impacted positively on the development of Niger Delta, but at least they will never say a Niger Delta has never been president.
That's right.
The same way the Igbos are saying, since the times of ceremonial presidency of Nnamdi Azikiwe and the vice presidency of Alex Ekweme in 1979 to 83. How many years? Over 3 decades. No Igbo has had a chance at the presidency. So they are now saying, give us a sense of inclusion, a sense of belonging. And that basically is the way to go. In terms of appointment, in terms of fixing the infrastructural deficit in that region, you need to do that because whether we like it or not, let me cite the example of the Southwest. Arising from the annulment of 2012 presidential election, the Southwest was the most vocal in terms of agitation. About self-determination, Odua People's Congress came up and all of that. And by 1999, without any legislation, the 3 political parties that were registered then decided to field only the Southwest presidential candidates. Even though there were 3 political parties, AD, Alliance for Democracy, APP, and PDP. PDP decided to field Obasanjo. It's APP then before they transmitted to ANPP, or People's Party. So what I'm saying is that AD and APP decided to go into working alliance and they fielded Olufalaye.
Yes, that's right.
Against a. It's not as if the Northerners were not interested in the presidency or the Southeasterners or what, but as a way of social engineering to forge a cohesion to bridge the division in the unity of this country, they decided to field the 2 presidential candidates, only 2 from the same Southwest. And one of them emerged president, and he ruled for 8 years. So today is a Yoruba man that is also a vice president. So the Yorubas do not have a sense of self-determination now because what do you want that you have not gotten from Nigeria?
That's right.
So if we can do similar appeals, meet the Southeasterners midway.
That's right.
Yes, okay, what do you need a referendum on self-determination for? Okay, you have not had access to presidency. Okay, in 2019, you have access. Right. One of you will be a vice presidential candidate of this party. In 2023, you can then become president. That will assuage the feeling. It will take the steam off Nnamdi Kanu's IPOB. Then you fix the infrastructural deficit. Second Niger bid was started by Goodluck Jonathan. Continue it. Finish it in a record time. The Southeast roads that are in deplorable condition, fix it. Even if you have to go PPP, public-private partnership, and then you have to do tolling to recoup the money. Let them have motorable roads. Let them feel the impact of governance. Make some key Southeasterners, bring them into your administration. Put them in key sensitive positions. You understand what I'm saying? Like the secretaries to the federal government now, we don't know whether Babacha is coming back or not. We are waiting for the outcome. But let's assume he's not coming back. Why not replace him with a Southeasterner? So that when you do a pecking order, out of the first 10, first 5, there is a Yoruba man, there is an Hausa man, there is an Igbo man, there is the South man. Whether we like it or not, that's how we can do with inclusive governance. Are you there, my brother?
Yes.
So we also need inclusive governance in terms of dealing with marginalized groups.
That's right.
Apart from the ethnic minorities, you also need women in this government.
Sure. You need the youth.
You need the youth. You need persons with disability. The population of persons with disability in Nigeria is about 25 million.
Wonderful.
That is huge. That's
Very
more
huge.
than some countries.
Some countries, yes.
Women is 49% of the population. So, in Southern Africa, how is it done? Affirmative action. You deal with issues of youth, persons with disability. Let me share the example of Uganda with you. In Uganda, women, out of the about 290 constituencies they have, women have 1 seat for each of those positions. Right. Then they have a quota for 5 different marginalized groups: the UNDP, the military, the youth, the persons with disability, and women. For the military, they have 10 reserve seats. Out of those 10 seats, 2 must be for women. Out of the 5 for the persons with disability, 1 must be for a woman. Out of the 5 for youth, 1 must be for a lady. Out of the 5 another 5 for women. So that way they have been able to mainstream everybody, inclusive. Everybody. Exactly. The same thing, similar thing happened in Kenya. Do you know in this disputed election of Ogun State, 3 women emerged governors out of 47 in Kenya, county governors. Right. You know, it's the first time it's happening. And so how will women not see themselves as being part of governance? There are 16 senatorial seats reserved for them. Out of 20, 3 belongs to persons with disability, 3 to youth. Then in the House of Representatives, something similar was done. 47 seats reserved. So what I'm saying is that we can look around us. We don't have to go to Europe. Look around us. How do other countries, how did they harmonize and engineer an inclusive governance?
Because of their heterogeneity.
How did they bring plurality of their society?
Right.
Nigeria is multi-religious, multicultural, multi-ethnic. So you have to have, that's why we opted for federalism. Right. And you cannot run our federalism in a unitary manner without having some challenges. So inclusive governance would reduce a lot of agitations that we currently have.
Well, thank you so much. That is all we can take on today's edition of the program, Frank Talk. Mr. Jide Ojo, as always, thank you so much for swinging by and for sharing your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let me say thanks for sharing your last 1 hour with us. Let's do the same tomorrow. I remain Alpha Jack, and yours in service.